right, good morning all. Just going to get rolling. This Friday is a little longer, so kind of going to 10 o'clock. And for those of you guys have to leave, and now that's perfectly fine. I'm going to turn over, a lot of you know Tom Wilson is brilliant when it comes to education and technical topics and curating all this stuff. So it was at Tom's advice, as you well know, he curates all the technical topics at the Fridays. So I'm going to turn it over to Tom to introduce our great speakers this morning and take it away.
Right,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks. Before I get started, set your calendars for September. The next one we're going to try to do a discussion on the public, hybrid, and private cloud, and have some speakers regarding OpenStack and some private clouds and things like that. So, but thanks for coming today. My name's Tom Wilson, and I think we've got a good discussion lined up. Before I announce the speakers, how many people are developers here in the room? How many people are systems administrators? Very good, awesome. Well, I think we've got the right audience here for these talks, and feel free to collect some notes. And what we'll do is, instead of doing a Q&A after each speech, we'll bring them all together up here and have a Q&A round after all three talks are done. So we've got Jason Webster of Azure talking on Azure. We've got Jason Yeomans talking Amazon Web Services. And we've got Ted Belling talking Google Cloud Platform. And it should be fun. We'll first start off with Jason. You want to take it away?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me get the PowerPoint set up here real quick. So let's see, where is it? There we go. All right, let's make sure this works. So appreciate you guys coming out today to talk a little bit about Microsoft Azure. Just a couple disclaimers about me and who I am. My name's Jason Webster. I'm with eGroup, and I've been with eGroup for going on 7 or 8 years now as the Director of Software Services. I've worn many hats in leading development teams, infrastructure teams, cloud teams, a lot of process design, project management. So I saw some hands over here. I definitely feel your all's pain. You know, you're all kind of like DevOps wrapped into a package. So I've seen a lot in the different realms of, development, cloud, business strategy, why cloud. But some of the things, a little bit about eGroup and a little bit about myself. I'm a big right cloud for the right customer strategy. I'm presenting on Azure today, which is a very timely topic. Got to spend a week last week down in Orlando at Microsoft's World Partner Conference and learned a lot about the late-breaking strategy. So some of the slides I've got for you guys today are kind of just a jam of different information I pulled from some of those slides, as well as some presentations we've done in the past. But truth be told, I'm a big AWS, Google fan, a big VMware fan, and I believe that the right cloud for the right customer and the right fit is more important than the speeds and feeds always, because I saw something the other day where AWS has launched over 1,000 new features last year alone, right? And Azure, I think, depending on which one you're looking at, was like 500 and 600 and 700 different features that they've launched just this year alone, right? So significant amounts of speeds and feeds type data, significant amounts of features and things like that. So when choosing a cloud, I really think it's more about who you can trust as a partner, because ultimately that's where your data resides. What's your strategy for multi-cloud platform? What's your use case? Are you looking for hyperscale? Are you looking for business continuity? Or are you looking for to support legacy apps, right? So I think different clouds kind of fit different folks. I'm going to try to keep this to 15 minutes. I know we have a tight packed agenda, but I think there is a little bit of flexible room for some questions. So if you guys have any questions, please just raise your hand and stop me as we go. So today, kind of going to give you guys an overview, right? I'm not going to dive too much into the technical, but I do want to leave you at the end of it with how you can get more information, how we can go deeper. I really like the topic coming up about hybrid private cloud. I think that's a big topic. I think a lot of the industry focuses on the public cloud only, and I think a lot of organizations, I think when I was looking at Gartner's study information, they said only 30% of workloads by 2020 are going to be in the cloud. So I think the hybrid cloud and how you work in a multi-cloud environment is going to be very, very important going forward. So I'm going to start today with a little bit of an overview of the cloud strategy as a high-level overview. And then I've got one slide I want to really dive into the application strategy, because I think this is where all the action's happening in Microsoft today. A lot of you all have seen the kind of 180 that Satya Nadella, the CEO that replaced Ballmer, has taken Microsoft. And there's a lot of energy and excitement with what's going on there. And I think the cloud is leading a lot of that change. And not surprisingly so, since Satya was coming from leading the cloud strategy at Microsoft in the past. So Microsoft, there's a message coming out. You guys are going to see this in all the marketing, all the things. It's about the experience, right? It's about the experience that the developers get, that the administrators get, that the end users get, that the business gets from engaging the cloud. So a lot of the things are going to focus on delivering experiences to customers, as opposed to delivering features and products and trying to say, we're going to beat this out versus this. They've committed to a strategy of any application, any platform, anything, anywhere, right? There was a big banners all over the conference that said Microsoft love Linux. And I was like, man, I never thought I would see that at a Microsoft conference. I almost want to take a picture of that and go, And then there's also the big change in Visual Studio and .NET, where it's become open source, right? So free as well, right? So Windows is free. So you see all these things, and it's an overall strategy of they're not concerned with the end-user computing platform anymore. They're not concerned about the OS. They're not concerned about the development language, because they've realized that everybody in this room has a different opinion, a different perspective, and a different desire. And then to win the cloud, you have to be able to speak to all those experiences of those different users and really dial into that. Because when you're picking a cloud, you can't say I'm a .NET cloud, because you've immediately taken over half of your audience and said, we're not for you guys, right? So any platform, any language, any application is important. And as you mentioned a little bit in the next presentation, first-class hybrid cloud experience. Microsoft is really big, as you guys will see in some of the slideware I've got coming up, that hybrid cloud is going to be everything, right? There's a lot of born in the cloud organizations, but the majority of organizations are going to be in the hybrid cloud. So you can be all cloud, which makes it a lot easier for you, but most organizations are still going to have that on-premise footprint, or they're going to have a multi-cloud strategy for the public cloud so that they're not locked into one vendor. And then the dual mode end user experience. That's the first time I've heard that reference, was last week. And I'm glad I heard it, because Microsoft has annoyed me to no end over the last 2 years with OneDrive for business, Skype for business, and these different things. But the story is starting to evolve, where basically the dual mode end user experience is, it's kind of what Apple's done well on the end user side over the years. Google has done a phenomenal job of this it's making the end user experience easy. But Microsoft wants to create a story where that end user experience is easy with apps, but also be able to seamlessly transition into your professional life, where things like data protection, data security, and all of that stuff make a lot more sense. So when you guys think of dual mode and you see kind of multiple versions of these applications, the paths are starting to converge with these applications to make that experience more seamless. But really, it's a story about the back end, right? It's a story about, this is for your family photos, where security is important, but not as important as your business's CRM data, right? And then enterprise grade. Microsoft is going to be pushing out a lot of information on enterprise grade and really what that means. And I don't want to confuse that with an enterprise cloud, because Microsoft is still, a best effort cloud from a definition standpoint, as well as AWS and Google and all of that is as well. So they're still very much focused on the best effort cloud, but they want to be an enterprise grade cloud, which really gets into Microsoft is the only hyperscale provider that does not access your data, keeps it encrypted, everything's encrypted, doesn't look at it, doesn't use it, cares about it, will litigate against countries that try to access your data if you're in multiple regions, and really is focused on privacy. In a future release coming up, I think probably in the next 2 or 3 months, Microsoft is actually creating a service where they hand over the encryption keys to the customer, so Microsoft doesn't have the ability to access your data in the public cloud. So data privacy, data protection, and not using your data for advertising purposes and things like that is a big tenet of what they call trust in the cloud and enterprise grade. So this is a great graphic. You guys may have seen this. It's just some Gartner research from earlier in the year about focus. And when you talk about that hybrid cloud, hybrid experience, you can kind of see and start to see the story of how this has evolved, right? When you look at Amazon at the top and you think, wow, you look at the Magic Quadrant for IaaS, right? Amazon's got a lead, and I think Amazon and Microsoft are the only ones in the top right quadrant for that. They've got a lead beyond everybody. They were born there, they started there, and you can kind of see why. They have zero focus on build private services, so their entire focus has been on building that infrastructure as a service platform. So they busted out of the gates, they were the first there with complete focus on it. And I bet you, if we came back next year and we looked at this, where you start to see that PaaS wedge start to load in, you're going to start to see additional wedges kind of load out there, especially in the software as a service, as they kind of bring in some partners and they start to bring in some of the other productivity tools and partner with other organizations. But also as they start to compete with some of the other clouds and the different modes that you can operate in. And you can see there kind of clearly that Microsoft, according to Gartner, has a full focus across the board. So they're not only concerned with delivering the IaaS experience. I need an app, I have an app, I want to use like an Azure Service Fabric, and I want to deploy it, and I want it to scale automatically. They're also concerned with the legacy workloads, where you can do platform as a service, and you can put your custom apps that maybe not ready for the cloud yet out there. They're focused on the software as a service. I mean, that's the Office 365 suite, right? Those are all the productivity tools that they want to deliver as a service. But beyond that, you guys recently saw, I think yesterday, I saw a ton of commercials. I mean, they must have spent a lot of money on this. Windows 10 was born yesterday, right? And I thought that was a little bit weird of a birthday celebration. I've got a son that's turning 3 tomorrow, and it's kind of competitive to which one's a bigger deal right now. One of them's talking about Mater and one of them's talking about Windows as a service. But it's going to be the last one. It's going to be the last Windows release, and that's a big, important milestone for Microsoft, because what they're going to do is they're going to start to deliver Windows as a service free to all users that want to use it. But truth be told, I don't know if they really are focused on delivering Windows to customers. They want that experience to be there. They want that platform, but they also want to get into iOS. They want to get into Android. They want to get into Mac OS. They want to get into all the different operating systems and be able to deliver an experience to each of those across the board. So the fact that it's free and the fact that it's as a service is a big step for Microsoft, because you don't have to pay for all that Windows licensing anymore going into the future, except the enterprise, but that's a little bit different of a story. So I thought this was a really good slide that they put up, and this is from the keynote, and really what it talks about is we have to start thinking of cloud as a collection of Lego blocks, right? You have different Lego blocks, they're different colors, and ultimately you're trying to build a solution that's custom in your mind of what's going to be most important for your business, your development practice, your operational entity, right? So what they're talking about here is, you can see up here the Azure App Service. That's for those hyperscale apps. That's for the Netflix type applications. That's for the modern apps, right? Those are the ones that are designed never to fail, that you can deploy, you can scale on demand, and you can deploy rapidly, right? Maybe not as rapidly as AWS, but that's a whole different story, right? Maybe they'll get there, but it's close, right? Then you have the Azure Service Fabric. That's for those applications that you want to maintain a little bit more control over. You still want to have that speed, but you want to have some more control. Maybe it requires a little bit more configuration, but you want to be geographically spread out across the world so that you can deliver worldwide services, but without having to worry about things like data protection, redundancy, and things like that. You can deploy that app without having to worry about the infrastructure. Virtual machines, it's VMs in the cloud, right? It's a lot of like what Google Platform's doing, what vCloud Air is doing. These are the workloads where you may have some client-server applications. You have multiple web front ends, you may have a few application servers, you have a database, and you need to architect those in a way that you have to control those VMs, you have to do traditional deployment models, all of that good stuff. It's a solution that fits all. Probably the most interesting thing, and I'm going to sign up for that because I'm really interested in this topic, is the cloud-inspired infrastructure. So what you're going to see are that, and you see a bunch of powered by. What they didn't put on the slide, what I was really surprised I didn't see just like be inundated with at the conference, was Azure Stack. So have you guys heard of Azure Stack? It's kind of Microsoft's OpenStack vision. So what they're doing is it's basically taking a bunch of products that they've built to run Azure, and it's a solution so that you can run Azure with full features on-premise, right? And have full integration between the on-premise data center and the cloud as if they were one entity. You can have the full self-service. You can have the Azure App Service, Azure Service Fabric. You can have all those things running on your infrastructure and be able to provide Azure, but do it all within your data center. So that's something that's going to go into preview within the next couple months. Something that's really interesting to keep an eye on because it's more OpenStack-ish, right? It's kind of Pivotal-like, but it's going to be, I've been talking to a lot of people about it, and people are kind of in a wait-and-see mode. I'll believe it when I see it. How turnkey can it be? But we'll see. It's going to be preview in a couple months, and we'll get some stuff out there. So if anybody's interested in talking about that, we could probably go a lot longer than 15 minutes on it. The other interesting thing, and we'll talk about it in the future slides, you see Visual Studio across that entire stack. Visual Studio, you gotta just break, for people like me that have used Visual Studio since like the late 90s, you gotta break that thing that it's just an IDE that deploys, builds, and publishes your application and integrates with several different things. Visual Studio is going to become a service as well. And Visual Studio is going to be the brand, not just for the development environment, but for the TFS, how do you manage your apps, how do you build your apps, how do you test your apps, and we'll get a little bit more into the vision of how Visual Studio interacts with the application groups. The other thing, and probably where I spend most of my time today, is analytics and insight, data paths, and data IaaS, right? So these are just basically, when you talk about Lego blocks, these are, for most developers that, developed in the last 5 years, this is not something that is, unfamiliar to you, but it's modern type databases, right? It's going beyond SQL Server. It's going beyond Oracle. It's going into, what's the right data solution for my application? And how do I stop worrying about the data architecture and just deliver data performance and deliver that to my applications in a meaningful way? And if I want to do a hyperscale app, how does my data platform scale with that app? And that's where data paths and data IaaS comes in, from a different level of how much speed you want to how much control you want. And then the business and analytics and insights, things like Power BI, Power View, there's about 7 different powers, right? But there's a lot of power tools out there. But how do you leverage those to deliver analytics, intelligence, and reporting to your applications without having to write the platform for it, right? So that's a Lego block that you can plug into your web front ends, that you can plug into your data platform and create a solution that can scale both on-premise all the way to the cloud, all managed through Visual Studio. And Internet of Things, man, that's a broad term, so we're going to stay out of that one today. But all surfaced by the products, right? Products, they might as well just put Office 365 up there. So, it's those are the tools that are out of the box. You buy them a la carte, you buy them as a service, you plug them into your environment, they're all in the same area. You can see, kind of going back to this slide, why Microsoft has the blue dots going across the board, because they're really delivering a complete solution across the board that everybody can get into, everybody can use, and it kind of fits all the different use cases. Getting into the speeds and feeds of things, there's areas where they lead, and there's areas where they don't. But Microsoft is the only vendor in the 4 major Magic Quadrants for Gartner that is in the top right quadrant for all 4 major cloud visions. The nearest competitor, AWS, is in 2 of those. So, any questions on the platform, kind of the vision strategy? I know that's a lot. That was about a week's worth of information in 2 slides. Any questions on that? Any thoughts? All right, so getting into the application strategy, it's all about utilizing Visual Studio Online, but keep in mind you got to break the traditional thought of what Visual Studio is. It's guided but flexible, right? And how many of you have used Visual Studio Online, the new one that was released maybe a couple weeks ago? We got one in the room. He was the one nodding as well, so that was good. So it's flexible to your development lifecycle, and you'll see some of the familiar things if you have not used it. You'll see some of the technologies that you use day in and day out as a developer and as an operations engineer in Visual Studio Online. So I challenge you all to take a look at it, because some of the things they've done is very not innovative, but I would say it's about time type stuff, right? it's adaptive to your people and process. We'll get into that a little bit more, right? It's more about, you know, how do you want to work, what tools do you want to use. They can adapt. It's got the flexible platforms, you know, it can work on iOS, all those different things. You know, you can actually load it up in Chrome and use a Visual Studio project, and it doesn't come up and say, I wish you were in Internet Explorer, right? So that's always good because, you know, truth be told, I'm a Mac guy that uses Chrome all the time, right? And try to stay out of Windows as much as possible.
Jason, 5 minutes.
5 minutes, perfect. And then it's got the first party and third party integrations. And I don't want to gloss over just first party and third party because it's one of the things that Microsoft is touting as a benefit, right? So most clouds, they have a lot of third party partners that are working with them. Microsoft is one of the only clouds in Visual Studio from the app standpoint that gives you a first party integration capability as well as the ability to plug in third parties. And one of the great examples that we were talking about internally at eGroup is, you know, if you go to Power BI, their analytics platform, I remember 10 years ago writing a bunch of integrations for things like QuickBooks, right? You know, trying to get QuickBooks data out of a proprietary database, get it into a SQL server so that we could surface it for more advanced analytics. There's a first-party integration now with Power BI where through a couple clicks, you're in QuickBooks. If you're using Salesforce.com as your platform, through a couple clicks, it exposes all of the Salesforce information. It gives you, I think it's like 50 or 60 pre-built dashboards, reports, and KPIs in the platform that you can choose from and start to customize to meet your own needs, to create your own business dashboards. It's all about acceleration with the first-party integrations, and third-party integrations it's all about connecting the dots with things that Microsoft has not provided out of the box or has yet to provide out of the box. So you're going to hear a lot about that. It's different because most clouds are relying mostly on third-party integrations, which third-party integrations for some things work great because they're typically more innovative, and first-party integrations are typically more stable, right? So this is the last information slide. So I've got one on this, and I've talked a lot about this and blogging and different things like this, and I'm very interested in you know, kind of application lifecycle. It's probably DevOps is probably the most used word since big data. I'm just glad we've got a different word than big data because I got tired of saying big data. But DevOps is, you know, it sounds like these two guys' job alone, but it's the integration of development and operation teams so that we can meet the modern IT demand, right? So applications need to change weekly. They need to change every 3 weeks. Competition's increasing. Development teams have always been able to deploy faster than the infrastructure or been ready to deploy faster than the infrastructure can take it and evolve. So, and that's not just a scale thing. That's how are we going through our process of development, stage, QA, all of that stuff, right? So what Visual Studio has done, and we, you know, when we get into like demos and things like that, you can kind of see this vision laid out in that prescriptive guidance. But they've kind of adopted a develop, build and test, deploy, monitor, and learn type aspect. And really that's agile, right? It's an agile life cycle, it's the full life cycle. But what you never have seen in a Microsoft slide before is you see Eclipse over there in the developer workstation. Java apps being managed and deployed completely without any traditional Microsoft technologies being deployed to Azure through Visual Studio Online using Eclipse as your IDE. You know, you can use Visual Studio, you can connect into GitHub, you can connect into Codeplex. You can still use Visual Studio Online if you're a Microsoft developer to store your information. You can use traditional waterfall models of TFS. You can use Agile, Scrum, and all these things are just point and clicks away of being able to design your own process in the environment, be able to set that process and scale it across multiple development projects. They've got some beautiful dashboards, right? You know, swim lanes, the whole thing that, you know, Pivotal Tracker and all these tools have had for years and Microsoft's refused to implement. But some beautiful modern, you know, implementation, you know, visualization, reporting, information. It plugs into Azure so that Power BI, you can connect into Visual Studio Online and model up the analytics immediately and pull out default reports of how your development teams are performing, when your release cycles, your maintenance, you know, how much uptime and efficiency you have without actually having to write those dashboards and reports because of the tight first-party integrations between the platforms.
Okay, we're going to have to switch gears. So
Okay.
Thanks, Jason, for your talk. That was awesome. And
just so you don't know, Jason's presentation just like all the other ones. So and the video. All the Fridays are recorded, and if we've got PowerPoints or other presentations, we'll make them available online.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody.
And so next, we're going to talk with Ted on the Google Cloud Platform.
Good morning. I thought I'd be 3, but I'll be 2 instead.
Yeah. Your slides are ready.
Yeah.
Is it lunchtime already?
Man, that's awesome. Fried chicken stars in this make-ahead meal. So I'm doing an experiment where I'm Chromecasting from my phone, which I've never done in public, so fingers crossed. Awesome. So good morning, I'm Ted Balin. I work for Google right here in Moncks Corner. I'm not flown in from Mountain View or anything. And I'm really excited to be here this morning and talk about the Google Cloud Platform. And there's kind of a lot I could talk about, so I'm going to try to really focus this on just kind of 3 sort of core services of the Google Cloud Platform, one of which is App Engine, another is Compute Engine, and then we'll talk about cloud storage. So using the same server and network and storage technology that runs Gmail and YouTube and Google Search, these products and the rest of the cloud platform give your apps access to the same infrastructure that runs all those services, with the same security, the same excellent operations teams behind that, that enable whatever it is that you have for your app or for your enterprise to run in our data centers. So one of the services is called Google App Engine, and this service has been around for a while. It's now part of the cloud platform overall. It's kind of changed a lot in recent years. In general, it's a platform as a service. So if you have code that's in Go or Python or PHP or Java, you can deploy it to App Engine, and it's a totally managed service. So you get to focus on writing your code, building your app, deploying 12 times a day if you want to, or once every 3 months, or whatever your schedule is, and all the details are handled. So you write your code, you push it to the cloud, and it runs at a URL of your choice. Fully managed. One of the very interesting services behind App Engine is called Cloud Data Store. So Data Store is a NoSQL database, fully managed, replicated between data centers, and it gives an alternative to like a SQL database. But you also have MySQL available if you want it. There's also a free tier. My website, tedb.us, really all it does is redirect to my LinkedIn page. But that is a tiny app that runs on App Engine, and it runs under the free tier. I've paid $0 for it ever. You actually get 28 hours per day of runtime at no price. A complementary service we've come out with recently is called Compute Engine, and this is a virtual machine. So this is analogous but not equivalent to like EC2 and this kind of thing. Extremely high performance, very strong networking, and again, these are virtual machines, literally KVM, in Google data centers on Google servers. Networking is really a key differentiator here. Extremely high performance, very high throughput, low latency. And then as an end user, Google handles all the heavy lifting, so you don't have to deal with complexities that other cloud providers have, where you have to say, oh, this subnet is here, and this zone, this subnet is over there, and how do I get between regions? None of that happens with Compute Engine. The other day, as an example, I launched VMs in Asia, North America, and Europe, and it was all on the same IP subnet, which, if you're an engineer, is sort of mind-blowing, right? I could ping between them, reach between them. There was no, oh, how do I make a tunnel across the internet between regions? It's the same provider. It should be just very easy to get between machines and to have that sort of unified network, even though you have presence that are close to your users on whatever continent your users are on. So I'll touch on cloud storage. This is an object storage service. If you're an Amazon user, think of analogous to like Amazon S3 type of a service. Way better. One kind of pretty cool thing that you can do, even at a personal level, but it scales all the way up to huge enterprise and huge web scale applications, is to run a static website with Google Cloud Storage. So if you just have like a hello world page or a landing page or like simple static HTML, this is a great service for that. It's a great service for like if you have any kind of media, video files, images. It also enables global edge caching. So what does that mean? So Google, besides our three major continents where we have actual virtual machines, there's a huge worldwide network deep toward the user on the internet of cache servers that as a cloud storage user you have access to. So if you upload objects to your cloud storage bucket and you mark them public, they can be cached close to where your users are, so they have high bandwidth, low latency access to your, if you're publishing a web app, your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, things like this, images, etc. There's a pretty cool service as part of cloud storage, and it doesn't require any additional work. You just like set a bit and it's automatic. It's called Nearline, which is great for archival storage, backups, etc. Very low price. 1 penny per gigabyte per month for nearline storage. And what that lets you do is you get to choose that, hey, I'm not going to access this data for a while, so I'm going to choose a lower price in order to have slightly slower access to this data. It's like I think it's a 3-second lag to get your data out. Still pretty fast, right? Way faster than tape or anything else. So that's a great choice for those archives and backups. So I want to hit on a few sort of key points that apply to all of Cloud Platform. We've touched on 3 specific services. There's a bunch I could talk to you about. I want to save a lot of time for your questions after the presentations. But Cloud Platform is awesome for developers. I've been a developer. I've been a sysadmin. I've kind of been a full-stack engineer, done everything. I love this from a developer standpoint in particular. Oftentimes as a developer, you're like, man, I don't care about Linux, I don't care about system administration, I don't want to deal with all that stuff. I just want to run my PHP app with Redis, with Drupal, with whatever, Mongo, etc., and have the details taken care of. So there's a great service as part of Cloud Platform. It's called Cloud Launcher. This is a screenshot from the website. And there's actually, this is slightly outdated, there's now 140-something pre-configured, pre-built images that you launch that you have 100% control over on a virtual machine with Google Compute Engine as the backend for it. So what this will do is launch a Compute Engine virtual machine of a size of your choice with whatever, Elasticsearch or Mongo, etc., ready to go. Very easy. And again, this is not a managed service, it's just sort of convenience, and you have full control over that instance. So I noticed people in the room who are not engineers, so I'll go through this quickly, but we have sort of a mixed audience. So I want to show you just a couple examples of how awesome the command line is for Compute Engine. I'm an engineer, so this is my sort of bias, right? Creating an instance is that easy. You just do create, give it a name. This is a 32 CPU, I think it's 200 plus gigabytes of RAM, that instance size. You can go all the way down to micro instances that are under $10 a month. This is what I do. I have like a personal virtual machine for screwing around with. Very inexpensive. You have your choice of distribution, Linux distribution or Windows. I think it's Windows 2008 and 2012 today that you can run. That was beta until recently. And you choose your zone to go in. And I'll touch on zones in a minute. It's pretty simple, but I'll touch on it in a minute. And then it launches up. It gives you an IP, and you're ready to go. I did this last night. This got online, it was probably like 20 seconds. Super fast. Other providers are not 20 seconds sometimes. And deleting it is that easy. Just like delete, give it a name, it's gone. I want to touch on cloud storage, which the way I look at Cloud Platform, Google Cloud Platform, is it doesn't have to be all or none, right? You don't have to say, well, I've got enterprise stuff, I've got cloud provider X, I don't want to move all that stuff today, right? I think you're going to want to over time, but you can sort of pick off, hey, I'm going to buy into this service, I'm going to buy into that service, and then just over the internet use it in a secure, encrypted way. One of the services that, if I were in that scenario today, that I'd be excited about is cloud storage. And I just want to give you a couple of quick command line examples just to sort of show you how easy it is, especially for people who are like already Linux administrators, already a DevOps type of person perhaps. You can make a bucket. And then I have this directory which has a bunch of stuff in it called TED Test. And I use this, so gsutil is the command line tool for dealing with Google Cloud Storage. So rsync will let me take this whole directory and then send it to the cloud into my bucket. It's private, encrypted, secure. And then just to show you just how simple some of these other commands are, is very similar to like Linux command line, right? I've got some Linux engineer experts in the room, so you guys might appreciate this. And I just remove it and then kill the bucket, and that was very simple. All this happened instantly. Like I waited 0 time for any of these commands to run from home. So I want to touch on security and privacy, which is a critical thing in the cloud. You really like. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't trust the cloud. I'm not sure how to be safe, right?" And you should be. You should ask these important questions. You should be looking out for yourself to understand what are the guarantees and what are the obligations that your cloud provider is giving you in terms of security. It's very important because they're not all equal, right? Google has an outstanding security team. I would say the best anywhere in the industry. Over 500 top experts in information security work for Google. I don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but usually just highlights the kinds of things, and there's a ton else behind this, that the Google Cloud security team thinks about when we're providing a secure, safe environment for our customers. All of your data is encrypted at rest. All of your data is encrypted in transit 100% of the time. It's an extremely safe place to host your data. We have the same physical data center security as for all of our other products, for your Gmail, for Google Search, etc. So, you might envision a data center with like biometrics and things like this, but I was actually surprised I could tell you this because it's on our website, so I can tell you. A lot of things are secret, but the data center floor features laser beam intrusion detection, which is pretty cool. Yeah. So, good luck breaking in and stealing customer data, right? Also, 100% it's encrypted, so even if you did, it's not useful, right? I trust all my personal stuff with the Google, any Google product, but particularly Cloud or Gmail or Drive or anything else. It's extremely safe. We have some certs. If you're in an environment where it's important, we have some auditing certifications that we passed. So I just want to touch on that for a second. There's a lot more detail. If you go to that URL, cloud.google.com/security, extremely high levels of detail. Even if you're not in a regulated like a HIPAA or a FISMA type environment, security is still important for you. I encourage you to learn more about kind of the way that Google thinks about your security. I want to touch on pricing because you always want to know how much is it going to cost me. So I've been really proud that Google has been extremely innovative in how we price Google Cloud Platform. When we announced the platform, we were at a certain price, which then immediately caused other cloud providers to then drop their price significantly in order to be almost competitive. So I thought that was very interesting to see happen. We've innovated heavily around that. One of the challenges that I've had from previous environments working with other cloud providers is that you basically need a PhD in finance to make sure that you're getting the best price with some of these other platforms. Extremely complicated. There's some heads nodding. You guys know what I'm talking about. So with Cloud Platform, there are no upfront fees for anything. There are no commitments. You use what you use, and then you can turn it off whenever you choose and stop paying for it. One of the key things around this is per-minute billing. We were very innovative around this. This is great in particular for developer environments So like maybe you might have a web app and you might have a production environment that's running all the time. You might have a development environment. Each of your developers might have their own environment, which is one of the things enabled only with the cloud. You can't have racks and racks and racks of physical servers and, oh, developer Susan, like you get these 12 servers for yourself. That doesn't happen, right? But in the cloud, Susan, Tim, whoever can have their own environment spun up for an hour and turned off, and you only pay for the hour. So the permanent billing, again, this was very innovative when it came out. It's not by the hour, so you could run 20 servers for 10 minutes and turn it off and pay for 200 minutes. There's a 10-minute minimum, so if you ran it for 5 minutes, you would pay for 10. Pretty nominal. Also great for batch processing. It's like, hello, I've got 100 terabytes of images on cloud storage. I need to process all these. Great. Launch your servers, do your work, turn it off. Only pay for what you use. Another great feature, especially for production environments, is sustained use discounts. So this is the key thing that enables you to not have any upfront fees for reserved instances and things like this. If you use an instance for 25% of a month, right, whatever a quarter of 30 days is, or 31 days, your price per hour will start to go down. So this basically gives you the same advantage from your standpoint as having a reserved instance on a different provider, but with the cloud, with Google Cloud Platform, you again only pay for what you use, and the discounts are automatic. There's no finance degree required to figure out how to get the best price. You always get the best price. I'm at 15 minutes. I'll probably do 3 or 4 more minutes if that's all right. One feature I'll touch on quickly, it's a little bit complex, is preemptible VMs. And this is pretty cool because it gives you up to 70% discount from normal pricing for VMs where you might say, look, I've got a batch workload. Again, I've got 100 terabytes of images to process, or video transcoding, or MapReduce, or Hadoop, or whatever, right? I need 100 instances for a period of time, right? Or some number. You can choose to just be regular on-demand instances, right? You can say, look, I want it for real, give it to me, and don't take it away from me. And you can pay the regular price, that's fine. If you're able to choose, hey, I'm willing to take some risk that I'm going to get this lower price, dramatically lower price, in exchange for a max 24-hour runtime of that instance. It will for sure shut off after 1 day. And it can go away if there are certain things that happen, right? They're in your zone, and I'll go back and talk about regions and zones, but in your zone, if there's a capacity constraint, what could happen, it's not, I don't really want to say how likely, but it could happen. If there were a request for a regular instance to come in that needed that resource, then the preemptible instance would be turned off. It's not a hard power off. You get it's like a 30-second advance notice, so you can save your data, do a clean shutdown. But it's great for batch processing is what it's for. And again, no finance degree, right? I keep harping on this because I'm just really proud of how they handle pricing. The discount is fixed. There is no bidding. There is no spot prices. You just automatically have this fixed discount. In fact, cloud platform is up to 40% less than other cloud platform, other public cloud providers. Pretty exciting. I want to share with you this quick graph. I'm almost finished. Of 3 times that we've actually done price reductions, and we actually have this public commitment to continue to reduce prices as our costs go down in accordance with Moore's law. It says that essentially that price per performance goes down over time, summarized. We are committed to continuing that philosophy, and we've done it since November 13, in April, October 14, and then just here in May, constant price reductions over time. If you're a new customer for Google Cloud Platform, you can sign up today, get a $300 credit. It's great. Do whatever you want with it. It's yours to use. I think there's a time limit on it, but there's really no reason not to check it out. I have a little instance that costs me under $10 a month, or you can run your whole enterprise, huge web scale apps. Snapchat is a huge user of App Engine. Tons of other success stories from all kinds of different industries, companies that are being successful with this today. So thank you. I appreciate it. and I'm excited to take your questions as part of the panel discussion. If you want to learn more, cloud.google.com. Feel free to email me anytime you like. And with that, I'll turn it over to the next speaker.
All right, great.
All right.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, next up is Jason to talk about Amazon Web Services.
Hi, Jason Yeomans. I'm co-founder of Bibliolabs, and my background's software development, and I guess the new term DevOps, but just doing ops and development and how that blends together. Let me find the Chromecast here.
I love all the food pictures.
Yes.
Seriously.
Sometimes I'll sit at home and just watch this thing fly by. If you don't have a Chromecast at home, they're available at your favorite electronics retailer.
Yes, they're awesome. All right.
Thank you.
Is that shot in the night 1/6?
Impressive.
Yeah, it's very okay. So I've kept it very, very light. I didn't want to get into a lot of, everyone has a disk, everyone has CPUs, and we all know about that. And I wanted to keep this more oriented to developers and actual value. I'll lightly touch on, there are different parties who benefit from cloud and different drivers for migrating workloads to clouds. The business, obviously has the benefit if you get to switch your CapEx to OpEx. Basically you no longer have to make investments in hardware, keep up with it, deal with power, redundancy here and there, and then have staffing 24 hours a day to deal with it. And as Ted mentioned, you also benefit from economies of scale. As these cloud providers grow, as they onboard more people, as people purchase excess capacity and then sell it on the spot market, you benefit from that. And Amazon's done a lot in that regard, just by creating the spot market in the first place. And I think there's similar to what you were talking about, there's like a 2-minute eviction warning where you can shut your spot instance down. Usually you'll operate at about 90% of the cost. And recently they launched a product where you can have fleets of spot instances, where basically they manage that for you. And the idea is you can purchase a fleet of say 500 spot instances, and you move more toward basically the uptime you would have with dedicated instances, but you pay at the spot price. So you benefit there. For the ops side, it's obviously a dream. You don't have to worry about capacity planning as much, although you need to think about it, but you don't have to worry about let me procure hardware, install, provision it, all that stuff, keep up with everything. And replace things when it goes out and have all this redundancy. You get all that free from all of the providers, basically. Cloud, there are a lot of tools to make your life easier. Before, when in the physical data center, you basically, you didn't have things to stand up like entire suites of infrastructure. So now, our infrastructure, I can stand up 2 subnets in different availability zones with 2 real-time failover load balancers, all the security groups and everything, and about 500 lines of configuration. Takes less than a minute. So you can rapidly iterate, and you can also capture all that knowledge. So typically what has happened in the past is, one person who's an expert or spends 2 or 3 weeks figuring all this stuff out, does something 2 years prior, and then no one wants to touch it because it's brittle. And the cool thing is, once in the cloud, you can have all of this stuff kind of codified in your source control and just bring things up. And having it that way also allows you to bring up, if you want to bring up a test stack or a whole test infrastructure. It makes it very easy to do that. Out of the box, you get monitoring, all that stuff, a lot of sophisticated tools. With CloudWatch, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of metrics you can monitor and then tie into notification systems. So all of your alerts, your text messaging. I spent weeks setting up, different monitoring tools, Zabbix, but that's just, it's another pain to deal with. It's just, you get all that free in the cloud. DNS is another thing. you get typically, and that's, all of this stuff, it takes a lot of time to manage on your own. So you get regulatory compliance, and this is all a business benefit. Amazon, just to mention a few, and Microsoft's also made a lot of headway in this regard. But the GovCloud stuff, HIPAA compliance, and there's a whole bunch of ISO whatever compliance that they've done. I mean, the list that long, But basically, they've done all that work. So as a business, you don't have to figure out what all that stuff means. You just put your stuff in there, and they're compliant and certified, and you don't have to think about it. And that's great from a business and from a development standpoint, that you don't have to deal with all that stuff. You can focus on what you do best, which is delivering value to customers. Product development. I mean, basically by using, I think Jason mentioned Amazon had over 1,000 feature releases last year, and it's really awesome. And I've found over the years, we've been using Amazon for probably 5 years now, that a lot of their feature releases are incredibly timely. One was Glacier. When we were, before we moved to the cloud, I had a data center with about 250 physical nodes, about 500 terabytes of storage. So moving was very difficult for us. And it was cost prohibitive at the time because it was only S3, and I think that much data would be roughly $10,000 or $15,000 a month to keep an S3. Well, they rolled Glacier out right away, so it's like, oh, this is awesome. Same price, penny per gigabyte or something like that. And we've seen that this happened again when we got to where we needed to do video processing. And lo and behold, I go to the Amazon panel, and they just launched a video transcoding pipeline. A couple of clicks, set it up. So it basically took something that, from a developer standpoint, would have been go do all this research, figure out all these formats and all of this stuff, and then build the software infrastructure to link all of these things together to build a pipeline. And then, of course, stand all the machines up, figure out how you independently scale the pieces at different stages of the pipeline. All of that work, which would have been a lot of money to develop as an individual company, was a few hours of just clicking in an interface, and boom, you have a pipeline. You stick stuff in this S3 bucket, it comes out the other end processed in multiple formats in another bucket. So that is really the value. I feel is just you're really leveraging the work of a lot of people, and you're the product development side, because you're solving your business needs, but then also on the monitoring management side, 24 hours a day, all this stuff's being replicated, distributed, and monitored. One of the big things, and you mentioned a lot about the hybrid cloud, Microsoft has put a lot of emphasis on that. Amazon, I feel, has done the same, and this was a large reason we ended up moving all of our entire physical infrastructure into the cloud, is because it provided a lot of tools to allow us to migrate as we needed to migrate, in bits and pieces. So obviously you just can't shut the data center down one day and have, hundreds of terabytes in the cloud and all your machines fully up. So there are a couple of tools that were provided, and one's VPC. So they have very sophisticated internal ability to set up subnets as you would on a physical LAN, subnet security groups, NAT rules, all that stuff. So that really helped us to kind of mirror some of our internal networking, and then also to keep it private, because a lot of this stuff, given that it was written for in-house use, we did not have security controls on a lot of our our web service endpoints and things like that. So that would have been another blocker if we just had to throw it up on a public instance, because then we would have had the burden of, we need to secure all this stuff, and that's just a big hurdle. So it was neat that we could throw it in a VPC, put a security group in front of it that says nothing can come in. These things are just back-end processing. They can go out, and if they go out, this stuff, they can get the responses. Then there was a direct connect, which allowed us to take our LAN and basically bridge it to the AWS network. So it was seamless. We just hooked that up, had a routing rule, so we could just ping inside the VPC transparently. And that was another thing that really helped us along, because then we could just slowly migrate stuff over. We didn't use Active Directory, but that's another thing that it can leverage if you're in Microsoft world, your Active Directory server remotely. The storage gateway is another one where it's an on-site device that asynchronously replicates your data to the cloud. So you can see it as a local file share on your network, and when you save to it, in the background it's just syncing off. So this would be good for backups, things like that. And then data export, import, export. So with hundreds of terabytes of data, obviously you can't just FTP this stuff up. So this was a really neat feature where they take physical disk and they load them into S3, and then from S3 they subsequently were loaded, put in Glacier due to cost. So these were all tools that kind of helped us move along in stages, and then before we finally terminated all our physical stuff. And the real value, I think, is it allows you to innovate as a developer, because you're now working at higher levels of abstraction. You're back to the Lego analogy that you used. You're gluing things together. You basically you want to use Redis or you want to use Memcache. Well, I don't need to figure out. I don't want to figure out how to set Memcache up. But prior to that, I had to go in the back and figure out how to set it up, how to get a cluster of them, talking with failovers and all this stuff. So you take something that in the cloud world is a 5-minute activity, and you turn it into like a multi-day activity with documentation and support and all this stuff. And that's just one example. We use Memcache for seamless failover. We have our machines, they stand up, they're stateless, and all the user sessions are backed by Memcache, so that when we take one down, new one comes up, it's still there. And it was a few clicks, and basically you just go through and you say, oh, the Memcache cluster, and I want this many servers in it, and that's it. And it gives you an endpoint. You put that endpoint in the configuration file, and you're done. You don't have to think about it. It's all transparent. That's very powerful. Same thing with storage. You don't have to worry about which machine has capacity, which has space. No, you just stick it in S3, and you have as much space as you need. And that was a huge deal, because we used to constantly have machines filling up, things like that. You're just always on that treadmill. So the cloud really allows you to leverage a lot of that, benefit from a lot of that. The CDN was another one that was huge. We're in the business of books and book readers, so we have a lot of high-resolution images that need to be distributed around the world. That obviously would be a massive undertaking for any company to set up. And these edge nodes, as you mentioned, it's awesome. There's, I don't know, last count, a year ago I looked, and there were 50-some edge nodes in pretty much anywhere in the world that you want to be. I'm sure they're probably double that now or something. But the CDN, it provides you with a lot of power to distribute your content. And it's another thing where you go in, you say, I want a distribution. Here are the countries I want, and I want to back it with this bucket. And that's it. So stuff shows up in a bucket, and magically it goes out to the rest of the world. Very powerful. Another thing that's, an hour of reading and just clicking and setting it up. And then there's also the developer community, which I think is incredibly important, because this is another leverage thing. You get to leverage all the work when you want to interact with AWS, and I know all the other providers have some of these as well, but you can find an SDK in almost any language, and not all of them are written by Amazon. It's just, but you can pretty much find it in any mainstream language. There are a bunch of pre-configured AMIs, things like that. So if you want a Tomcat server with a certain feature on it, I'm sure you can find an AMI that someone's already baked and that will do that for you. So there's a huge community there. And then also there are things like Stack Overflow posts. If you're going to run into problems, and you're generally not going to be the first person to run into that problem. So having the cloud with the largest audience is beneficial, because it allows you to rapidly work through your issues, because there's a lot of information out there on it. And this is really the key value, I think, here from a development standpoint, is just the ability to innovate, write code, push it out. There are also a lot of other tools that Amazon has recently launched, a whole suite of tools for code deploy, continuous deployment of code. We're basically, and unfortunately I just wrote a bunch of stuff that does this, but and then they wrote it, and I was like, oh man, just my mind working and thought it was cool. Now I look like I wasn't paying attention. But it's really getting down to, you just commit to your repo, and In this particular, in Amazon's case, I read last night, you add a one file. It's just basically a configuration file that's specific to Amazon, but that basically gives it instructions on what to do, how to deploy it, and how to scale it and all this stuff. So that's really powerful, and I think that's where, the cloud is cool for people who are, I think, more on the infrastructure side, but, I'm of the opinion that developers shouldn't have to care about the cloud that much. It's really just, it's another tool in the box. I mean, it's just like your IDE and stuff. It's just something to make your job done. And your job is to write features and do cool things. So I think it does that. That's it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Hey, Jason, thank you. Okay, if I could ask all the speakers to come to the table, and we will do a little round table of some questions.
Let's see, where was it here?
Great job.
The rectangle table.
So I noticed that there was a lot of subtle knocks going on amongst the talks there. So hopefully you guys don't mind sitting together. Don't hurt each other. Too bad. So I'll go ahead and take some questions from the audience now. Anybody have a question?
I have one on the notification processing service, you mentioned that. So I just worked with some vendors, it's an aftermarket device, plug in your car, and if your oil light comes on, they make a notification, right? That's okay, you can get that notification an hour later, a day later. But one of them is unlocking the keys. So if it does go and use your service, goes in the cloud and uses this service they have built in, you guys do that? Can you guarantee a 10-second or less turnaround going into the cloud, coming out of the cloud? Is that kind of a service you would offer?
So the question is on notifications, and can you
Yeah, notifications.
guarantee a 10-second turnaround? Does your
Reliable this time? That was the question I was asking Mike.
I can try to address that unless you guys want to take it too. So Google Cloud Platform has a couple of things around that concept. So it's not something, to be clear, that an end user would use themselves, but if you're a software developer, creating that kind of a thing for your consumers, a great thing. I think it might be in beta right now. Is called Cloud PubSub. This is publish subscribe. So this is a great service. It has low latency, extremely high capacity for any kind of event distribution. So what I mean by that is maybe have what people are calling Internet of Things, which is a term I dislike, but is a trend right now. It's like a big data type of a word, right? So, like at home, I have like all these little smart light bulbs and stuff, right? So if I were building that, I would like have an endpoint on App Engine that takes these like HTTPS requests from end consumers, publishes an event. We'll probably write it to like BigQuery or Cloud SQL, but also send the event to Cloud PubSub, which then will take that message, begin my processing pipeline for that event. So if I'm doing trending analysis, if I'm recording the data, if I'm notifying a different device, things like that. That's probably the clearest service. There's a couple other notification-related services. There's a task queue that's part of App Engine.
I'm sorry. If the thing doesn't get out, published or ever send a little email in 10 seconds or less, I'm just saying, who's liable for something like that? If it doesn't, someone gets hurt because they can't get the key in the door.
Yeah, I hear your question. I don't have an answer around specific time guarantees around that service today.
That's what I was wondering.
If you have an application around that, I'd be happy to take an email from you, and I can reach out to the cloud team and try to get back to you on that if that's something that you're working on.
So for something that level, if it's that critical, I mean, my suggestion would be that you'd probably want to have your application control that. And there are some things like, I know Kafka and traditional message queuing things have delivery guarantees. The Amazon does have a service to do the SNS, SQS, which is simple queuing service and simple notification service, and SNS has the ability to send text messages, emails, etc. But I don't know if they have an SLA that guarantees like a 10-second, nor do I even, I don't know if there's an SLA where they guarantee delivery at all. So I don't, to directly answer your question.
That's all.
Yeah, I would be confident you could get several nines of uptime on that, but there's a lot. The cloud's just one piece of that puzzle. The application that handles the request and the architecture of that application from your car, the carrier that takes the communication to the cloud and back is probably the most fragile link there. But to answer the question, I think any of the clouds we're talking about, or really most clouds, have the ability to scale to make sure that the application isn't saturated at the cloud level and make sure that the delay isn't there. But there's so many pieces of that puzzle. The question is who is liable. It's really who's at fault. And fortunately and unfortunately, every cloud provider we're talking about has a lot of guaranteed uptimes that if you get into the fine print, they have a lot of legal ways to get out of too, right? So that is a challenge, guaranteeing uptime.
So just to take it another turn, a question I would like to ask is, for each of you, what is your knowledge of what each of these vendors are doing to embrace the whole movement of containers and Docker? So what is each vendor's platform doing to embrace that?
Yeah, I'll lead off just because I'm the closest to you. It really goes back to any application anywhere. I mean, there's a lot of momentum going into containerization, microservices, fabrics, and things like that, so that you can deploy anything, right? So Azure supports Docker and containers today. I think it's something that's going to continue to be an evolving story over time. I would say, truth be told, I would say AWS is probably ahead in that category from Azure. But I think there's a lot of things in that category that I think the feature is going to be written over the next 6 to 24 months.
Great.
And Amazon has a container service, a container management, where they distribute the workloads and manage all of that. I mean, it's probably very similar. I don't know the full details. I mean, I think it's just you put the containers in there and you specify how you want them distributed and the number of copies and how the routing works, and they just make sure that happens.
So I can probably talk for an hour about this.
You get to shine. Now you get to shine.
You and I have talked many times about containers. I'm super excited about containers. Containers is not just the future for Google, it's also the past, but also the future. We at Google have done containers in one form or another for 10 plus years. I'm extremely excited about the work that's going on. It has been going on and continues. We just released a paper. I'm going to try to keep it short. I'm going to skip that subject. Short, so freely. But so we do a lot of work internally. We started and now have several community partners. I think even Microsoft is a partner on what's called Kubernetes. And Kubernetes is an open source project that takes the ideas from what Google has done internally with our system called Borg that runs our software. And we've taken the Borg ideas that are very complex, taken the principle of them and implemented them as Kubernetes. So then everyone can run either physical servers, any cloud provider. It's not just Compute Engine. I think Raspberry Pi will actually run Kubernetes technically. Don't do that. So Kubernetes is kind of an advanced strategy, right? Not everybody is going to need Kubernetes necessarily if you have like a very small scale and very simple needs. But that enables you to have a sophisticated scheduler. So you have like maybe 20 servers that are all what DevOps people think of as cattle, right? If cow number 6 dies, I'm not sad, right? If server fuzzy dies, I'm sad, right? It's a pet metaphor that in the industry we're trying to get away from. So pets versus cattle. So I have X number of servers. They all run Kubernetes. I deploy my app. I don't care what server they run on. I just want it to be on a server or 12 servers, right? Globally distributed, load balanced. So that's software for managing that. It's kind of sophisticated. One pretty cool thing, and we'll try real hard to keep it to finish.
Sure.
One pretty cool thing that I'm excited about the Google Cloud Platform has come out with is called Google Container Engine. So this is Kubernetes as a service. So I launched Kubernetes. It's pretty simple I'm a Linux engineer, so it's pretty simple for me to get running. But I have a lot of background in that, so I'm well prepared. But if you're new to that, it's pretty intimidating. So with Google Container Service, part of the cloud platform, it will run Compute Engine instances for you that I don't want to go so far as to call it a managed service, but definitely the cloud does a lot of smarts to keep it available for you. So it deploys Kubernetes, and then you as an end user just push your Docker container, and then your app runs. It's great. I'm really excited about it. Just in general, if you decide to use Kubernetes, if you don't, that's fine. There's a couple of other Docker or even Rocket or other container-based technologies now. It's a very actively fast-moving space. But for me, if I was building a new web app today, not at Google, 100% would be in Docker or a container platform in general. But all new applications should be containered, I think. And I could probably talk for an hour about why. You could too.
Maybe that's another fun Friday
That's
talk.
another Friday talk. Yeah. So.
Great. Any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
From a startup standpoint and someone with a finance background, no development whatsoever, would you say that there's a steep learning curve on one product over the other for a platform, or is it pretty simple / not easy at all to kind of get going on your own?
Do you want to start this time?
Well, of course, everyone's biased to whatever they've, slogged through and learned. But I think, at least from Amazon's perspective, a lot of it depends on the complexity of your application. So initially, it's typically not very complicated. Typically, you're going to start with 1 or 2 servers, maybe not have a load balancer. But that's about it. So if those are your needs as a startup, then I would imagine all of them are probably going to be equally similar because it's just log into a web interface, fire up a standard instance, deploy to it, go click, fire up a load balancer and say, hey, put these guys behind it. Not very complicated. The default security rules will work well. But as you grow, I think Amazon, one thing I like is you can always get access to the most cutting edge features through the command line interfaces. Typically, someone puts an SDK out, and then the web interface follows shortly behind that. So you can manage pretty much everything you need to with the web interface. And I like how in the web interface it ties the resources together, so that when you're in CloudFront and you want to do something with a bucket, it'll have a drop down of your buckets or a type of head or something. So you don't have to go look up the ARN or something like that. So I think it's very approachable. But as with anything, once your needs become complex and you start bucketing all this, and just that's inherently complex. And I think they'll be complex in any environment.
Follow up with that question.
Let the other guys answer that
Well,
from
I
their
wanted
side.
to pick up. So
Okay.
I fully adopted Gmail. I use Google Drive for everything, and separately I do it all on Microsoft 365. So is there a benefit to either, I guess, my skill set in either of those platforms to having Azure or Google Cloud over Amazon Web Services?
Yeah, and I'll be brief with it. I think that's where I was going to hit with that. Google as well as Microsoft have a lot of familiarity, right? Google's been in the business for a long time. I have Gmail, love Gmail. I have Office 365 for work, love Office 365 for work. There's a lot of, in the productivity set, so there's a lot of familiarity, right? And that familiarity has been extended to the cloud offerings so that it doesn't, it feels intuitive to those that use those products, right? But to answer your original question on which one's right for you, I think it goes back to kind of my opening statement. I'd have to ask I'd probably have at least 10 questions for you. But what's the goal? What's important? Is security and risk? Is it scalability? What drives your profitability? And productivity. All of those questions kind of fit into what's the right cloud. And I think all of us up here have great solutions. And the right cloud for a startup business depends on what you're doing, but I can say for sure the cloud is the way to go when you're a startup. Be born in the cloud, don't go on-prem.
Yeah.
So let me make sure I started taking your question from the right angle. So are you looking at this from sort of like an IT infrastructure standpoint, or are you building web apps, or just sort of we've had tons of successful customers with Google App Engine I sort of touched on earlier. And I have a small web app on there myself, and I think the key enabler with that is App Engine lets you have extraordinarily sophisticated back-end services that are replicated and highly available and safe and encrypted, etc., 100% managed. So if I was starting a small, 5-person web company today to do, really anything, 100% I would start with App Engine. You can write code in I don't know what's your favorite language?
I don't write, but the site is PHP.
Or PHP, yeah. We had PHP in beta until recently. It just went generally available on App Engine. So any PHP code you have can run on App Engine, which is pretty exciting. Are you using MySQL or a different database? Yeah. There's a service called Google Cloud SQL that is a fully managed MySQL, replicated, safe, encrypted, very modest price. And again, you pay for what you use, you pay for your capacity that you want. So if I was in what sounds like a situation similar to yours, App Engine, Cloud SQL, I would encourage you to break beyond it. So MySQL is great as like a transactional database for sort of relational data. I would encourage you also to look at, even if you're not an App Engine, you can still, if you want to, use Google Cloud Data Store, which is a NoSQL database. You get a SQL style query language, so your developers have this familiarity with how to query the data. But it has some better scaling properties than MySQL. There's a couple of database services, but I'll sort of keep it brief. Yeah.
Great.
And one last thing is that basically, I mean, all of the providers, I believe, have a free tier, and given if it's a small app, it really should be a minimal investment to just go kick the tires on each one of them and just figure out what fits your what you're most comfortable with best. It shouldn't be that much energy to invest.
Awesome. Great.
Tom, the lady in the rear.
Yes.
From an IT infrastructure perspective, are there any significant benefits to moving like an enterprise app to the cloud with an Oracle backend database? Can you talk to that for the platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we do is we're a service provider, right? So a lot of the things we do is advise businesses on those specific enterprise applications, or to your point, application strategy, right? That's the kind of the why I'm here and the what I do for a day. So in that, the enterprise app with an Oracle backend, kind of just a typical client server type application, there's a lot of things coming in there. And the first thing that comes in is what is the resiliency of the application, right? So is resiliency handled at the infrastructure layer, or is resiliency handled at the application layer? Every cloud that we're talking about up here is what they call a best effort cloud, where your application has to be designed to survive failures at various infrastructure points. And there's a lot of ways you can do that through availability groups and all of that. I think everybody up here provides Oracle services as a back end, Oracle as a service, or, going back into the platform as a service model. So you can actually just take your Oracle environment and port it to the cloud, as well as, application services that can connect to that Oracle service. Whether you want to take your current application, import it to the cloud, or you want to consume the cloud in a more IaaS type model. So I think we all have solutions around that. Again, I hate to go back to it. The question is specifically, it comes around the business challenges. Are you a regulated business? Is there security concerns? How do you like to buy and procure the cloud? All those questions come into the business conversation that are just as important as the technology considerations.
So I'm going to take issue with one thing you said.
Okay.
And you touched on it a couple times. This term best effort cloud.
Yep.
So I take it that means a specific thing to you. I'm going to take issue with that for the cloud platform for Google. I'm not actually sure what it means, but I would not characterize Google Cloud Platform as best effort. It is definitely production grade. There's customers in production today. One of the key features that enables higher uptime on virtual machines on Compute Engine is live migration, which I think is a big differentiator for the Google Cloud Platform. So there might be scenarios where you have a virtual machine that runs on a physical server, right? Like this is not imaginary. It's like physically, like I can touch the server that your VM is on, right? Because I work in hardware ops. So this is not like a normal thing, right? So if there were to be like some kind of a soft failure on that machine or that rack, within your zone that you're in, that VM will live migrate without you having any idea. There's like a log event, but like from a usage standpoint, you have no idea, to a different machine automatically, fully managed.
Amazon does the same thing, but
Other than that, okay.
But I think what he's saying is basically no one guarantees 100% uptime,
Sure.
right?
People
So,
would do that
so whatever that
for
small
sure, yeah.
sliver is, that's the best effort. Things can fail, even though it's highly unlikely, and you have all of this plumbing in place to mitigate the risk. But at the end of the day, no one's offering 100% uptime.
Yeah, to define the term best effort versus enterprise, and there's a lot of ways to say this, you know, and there's a lot of industry terms out there. I think you're on the point. It's all about the guarantee, to your point, right? There's no guarantee of uptime, especially with session-specific information. You know, that you'll have survivability in a live migration in any of the clouds. The only cloud that's not sitting up here, so we'll represent Forum, is that does that. That's technically in that enterprise grade, and I wouldn't say the only, right? Because there are many clouds out there. But one of the leading ones would be like an IBM or a vCloud Air that has a little bit different of a feel, but those guys are totally in a different architectural standpoint than I would say that Google, Azure, and AWS are. So it's completely different visions and use cases.
So, I'm going to disagree again with you, respectfully, which is good.
No, you're fine.
I like that discussion, right? And I want to get back to specifically the Oracle thing. Let me actually take it in two parts. So, I kind of hear you saying, like, positioning like enterprise grade is like better than, what was your term, sorry?
Best effort.
Best effort.
Not better. I didn't say better. It's
understood.
different.
I would argue, at least for our platform, that I think that's sort of selling it short. I really think having infrastructure in the cloud is actually better than enterprise. Having run enterprise hardware sucks, right?
Yep.
It goes down, I get paged, right? You have to figure out HA, and then sometimes the HA isn't, and you've done it too, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree.
I would argue that being in really any cloud provider, in any of these top cloud providers that we're talking about, right, is actually better than enterprise grade when you approach it correctly. I'd like to get back to the latest question about Oracle. I just had to sort of.
No, you're
you kind of started forward with me. So is your workload sort of is it more transactional or more sort of analytical?
Transactional.
Yeah. Google doesn't offer a managed Oracle service on our platform. I think with Amazon RDS you can do Oracle, right? That's something that some people use. But Compute Engine is regular Linux, and it has awesome storage performance, local SSD, as well as network-based solid-state drive, you know, for high-speed, low latency flash storage. So I would, if I was in that scenario running Oracle, I would consider looking at just taking a regular Linux instance with Red Hat, or using Red Hat or OpenSUSE or
Red Hat.
yeah. So you can run Red Hat Enterprise Linux on Compute Engine, and then just install Oracle as you would from any physical server, and do it kind of in a very similar way. But then in the cloud, so you have there's a service called Persistent Disk, which it's kind of similar to SAN storage, except like sort of this better cloud vision of it. And you can do snapshots. You can replicate that data to other locations very easily. Amazon and Azure, you can do conceptually a similar thing as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does go back to what Jason mentioned, which is what are your goals? What are you trying to hope to accomplish by moving? What are the drivers for the problem?
Right, but I know that the cloud platforms really push and support more of the Mongo and SQL Server and so on, and not as much for maybe cost and competitive advantages for Oracle. And I was just wondering if it made any sense to even consider that for enterprise apps.
I think I'm fairly certain the licenses will just transfer, so you won't have. I think they have two models. One's you can pay a higher per hour rate, if you don't have your own license, or you could bring your own license. So I think then you're just down to hardware costs,
Right.
which is a much simpler comparison.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
And to the questions, just kind of sitting there observing what's in play. We are right now every year, and it starts at the end of May. We start to evaluate our code camp program, and I'm going to be working with Tom here very shortly. We are bringing back once a month. We're bringing back day-long workshops on a Saturday. And the question you're asking about price, from a financial standpoint, I think that has to be addressed. You're going to be asking from an operational standpoint. So exactly, and enterprise. So I think that, and I hear Ted saying this, and I can spend an hour just talking about this. And I think, in fairness, as an organization, we should go a little deeper because it's not something we're going to get anywhere else. So what I'd like to do is work with Tom. We had several years ago, the brainchild was Tom's was to bring 6 topics together for a day-long conference, all local source speakers, a super happy Dev Day. And I think it's and just, sitting here, it's just time to bring it back. It's limited to 40 people. It happens here. And I've been looking at a way to change some of our, what I call social programming or social networking programming to an educational topic. I really want to move away from the purely social. So I think that my thinking is October 22nd is when we do our quarter bash. We might change it to having that day as a super happy dev day, do the topics, and then at 5 o'clock have a social event next door. That way the conversation can go on, the specifics and that kind of thing. But let us work together, because what these guys have is a tremendous amount of knowledge. And I think that we owe more than now some of these conversations. So I think that's the first thing. And we had a gentleman here in the building, and he says, Ernest, he says, not probably for you guys at your level, but he says, every employee should know about Agile and Scrum. So we're doing a one-day workshop on Agile and Scrum in September. So that was the best he could do. Is we're going to. So I think that's kind of the thing, right? The other thing is something that I was talking to Victoria about. She sent you guys an email saying, listen, we have you confirmed. So what we're going to do is we're going to send back an email thanking you for coming, but more importantly, pointing you to the videos. Now, the point that Ted brought up, we had Mr. Kubernetes at the Code Show conference, Brandon Burns, and an hour-long presentation on, his entire presentation is on our Vimeo channel. So if somebody wants to learn a little bit about Kubernetes, they can go there, right? So I think that, what we've got to do right now is sort of tie these pieces together for those who are not here, who can actually, see sort of, globally. And so, for Tom has curated our educational insight from the time we started, we set eyes on it, which was Code Camp. So I think kind of, going back to him, going to our Code Camp advisory group, and I actively want you guys to tell us, some of the presentations you like. We suddenly can program in for the next 3 months. So this isn't about just, it shouldn't be, the burden shouldn't entirely be on Tom to just come up with these topics, which, brilliant, by the way. But I think that, it's more effective if we hear back. So if you, Pam, didn't feel like there were certain areas that you didn't get enough on, let's hear about it. So, we can kind of tweak it a little bit to kind of give it. But I definitely think that just as I said over here, we do the Super Happy Dev in October 22nd. That's plenty of time. We obviously had a Culture Conference with national speakers that we did in less time to plan it and execute it. So this is all local, so I think we can do it, and we don't have to go somewhere for the venue and that kind of thing. So I would just kind of tee that up, and again, just kind of let us, I think, Tom had asked, if we got any questions ahead of time, and we didn't get any feedback. That feedback is important, so we can. These are bright guys, basically, who can spend an hour just talking about one particular aspect of it. So I think the more we have questions that kind of resonate. The other thing is for the Super Happy Dev, it'll be very limited to just purely engineering and technical folks. So I think when you have a limit of 40, we cannot have anybody who's, non-technical. Just kind of there's just a limitation. So I just tee that up. But just to in closing for my remarks, I certainly appreciate. Ted's got to go through 3 layers of approval to come in and speak. So it took us about 2.5 weeks, but thank you, for.
I appreciate the invite.
And to both awesome. Jason, from Google Labs and from eGroup. I was telling Mike, I said, I went directly to Microsoft and couldn't get any traction. So Mike actually initiated a call, but this is great. I'm happy to talk about it. So he really kind of bailed me out by basically bringing in Jason to speak. And it's great that you just went to the conference, the latest and greatest.
Happy to do it. Thank you for
So,
having me.
we'll do it more, we'll do it more, and, we'll set, certainly we'll set some topics with, Tom for this October 21st. It's gonna be day long, 9 to 5, followed by, some craft beer at the end of the day.
Excellent. I like craft beer.
I want to. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
I just want to quickly thank Tom and Ernest. This was great. Thank you guys for what you do for the community, not just today, but you've been doing this for a lot of years, and this is awesome. And thank you guys for all being here. I love the tech community in this town. So.
And I want to turn back to Tom. You might also want to talk about NodeBox, which is this weekend.
Yeah, real quick, tomorrow about 60 people are going to get together and cram into the Jack Russell office and build 40 robots and program them with JavaScript. And so we're going to have some events, and of course, unfortunately we're sold out, but the videos will be posted. I'll work with Ernest to get distributed. We're doing an art bot exhibition where people will actually paint with these bots, and we're doing battle bots. Have you guys ever seen the show Battle Bots? So we're bringing that back in Charleston. Got all kinds of decorations to do,
Go for
and
Wedge.
then we're doing a exhibition demo where any kind of latest technology, whether using hand motion gestures to drive your bot, voice, or anything you can think of, and we will be videoing all of that to display. But it's a very family-friendly event, so there's going to be a lot of kids running around, a lot of people doing things, so it's going to be a lot of fun. But again, thank you all for showing up, and I hope this was valuable, and look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.